Yeah. I'll try to be as succinct as possible.
Here we go.
Okay, this is a photo of my family farm where I grew up, and as an architect, I always found it interesting the similarities between architecture and agriculture, in that both cultivate, and if you look at the term of cultivate, it's to promote, to improve by growth, to develop, or improve by refining. This is a photo of another architect, Brian McKay Lyons in the East Coast. This is Cliff House. And what I find interesting about Brian's work is that he describes his work under a universal value system. That in order for architecture to be socially relevant, architecture must be accessible, it must be affordable. This is something I also found interesting. This is an image by Canadian photographer Edward Bertinsky. And as an architecture student, I worked in an assembly plant with General Motors, and I always found it interesting, the disconnect between nature and the industrialized world. Through my master's thesis, this is the frontispiece for my thesis, and although this isn't about my thesis, I attempted to understand the discrepancy or the divide between nature and the industrialized world through phenomenology, which is the study of structures of experience or consciousness, and how I might merge nature in an urban setting. And although this isn't my thesis, one thing that became very clear is that water is the most intrinsic material in order to bridge that divide. 2/3 of the human body are composed of water. The human brain, the home of our consciousness, is 95% water. And in addition, water is one of the only substances where we can experience it in many different states. This is our firm-led architects. We face Jackson Creek, which you can see in front of our office here. Jackson Creek is an ecological relic in downtown Peterborough. It literally divides the downtown, but 2/3 of the creek are covered over, have been paved over with parking lots and building structures. It's ironic because Jackson Creek itself was actually the reason why Peterborough is where it is. Peterborough was already on a trading route, but Jackson Creek was used for early industrial development. This is Dixon Mill, which used Jackson Creek. It was a more attainable water source rather than larger Tomby River, which was too large to manage. Unfortunately, despite the fact that it was the birth and the reason Peterborough is where it is, it's neglected in the urban core. It's no longer used for industrial purposes other than capturing storm water flowing into it, and it's often the site of debris and neglected in urban planning. So lo and behold, this year, the Electric City Culture Council has an annual event called Arts Week, and they called for artists to submit proposals under the banner of the Jackson Creek Project. This is an image by artist Esther Vincent called Going Down to Jackson, where she took photos of residents in the creek in their boots. So I let architects put in a proposal under Arts Week, and we thought, other cities have been able to do really good things with rivers in their downtown. This is a picture of Riverwalk in San Antonio, Texas. It's the largest urban ecosystem in the United States in a downtown center. 19 miles, including sidewalks and restored riparian area. This is a similar photograph, only in Seoul, South Korea. This is a 11-kilometer stretch of river through the center of the city. It was once covered over by a highway in the 1950s. In 2003, they tore down the highway, re-exposed the river, and now it's a public park space in the middle of the city. So in terms of our proposal, the Jackson Creek covers through the center of 8 blocks through downtown Peterborough. This is an overall map that we put forward. But in order to be more specific, we broke it out into 3 different areas to talk about the potential of what an exposed creek might do for urban development. At the end of the creek where it empties into Little Lake, currently it's the city's public work yard. And this whole stretch of the creek is actually covered over. This is a stretch of the trail track, so eventually there's talk of a GO train potentially coming to Peterborough one day. What if we opened up the creek in this section, used it for a potential transit station where the GO train would come through, move the city's bus terminal to this location. If you came to Peterborough via transit, Jackson Creek would be front and center. It would be a public artery that would come through, divide through the downtown, linking Little Lake through to the urban center. We could include boardwalks to connect people through that stretch. Looking at the more central location, the creek itself actually divides through the mid-block. So there's peripheral blocks with heavy building stock, but through the center it's actually undeveloped. So opening the creek through these sections would mean that it would spawn urban renewal. It would be a new street frontage, an urban street frontage, where there would be a pedestrian artery, not necessarily a road artery, but new building stock could be built facing into this central creek spine. This is an image showing, how there could be tiered steps. It also would help with flood mitigation, having more capacity if there was a surge. And this is the opposite end. Currently, this is the transit terminal, which doesn't really make sense in relation to the rail. So we imagine if we removed the transit terminal, exposed the creek, and did urban densification, highlighting mixed-use development, commercial, residential, above grade. So potentially using the creek as a catalyst for urban growth through this area, which links different zones. There's the Cafe District along Hunter Street, and flows into the Charlotte Mews, which would be on the other side. So linking different districts within the downtown core. So we took part in Arts Week. We actually hosted the launch of Arts Week this year. And in addition to our study, which you can see here, we also did an installation along the creek bed, which was this undulating wood structure that caught people's attention and drew their attention to our study in hopes of getting excitement. So to tie back to agriculture and architecture, architecture can be more than buildings. And in this sense, if you plant a seed, we've had the interest of planners in the city, the mayor's exposed interest, and many city councilors. And so potentially we can watch it grow into something that'll be an important piece of the fabric of downtown Peterborough.
Well done, sir.
Thanks.